All right. Well,
Yeah.
we are on. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I am so excited to be here with you today. We have quite a few people still coming in, still getting settled. We're going to treat this like it's a regular event with chairs and tables. And so we're letting people get to come in and get settled. We're so glad you could be here with us today. Whether you are in person live right now or on replay, we are thrilled that you're making time for your health and to find out how to take care of yourself in these most uncertain times for our health and welfare. Today we'll be speaking about preventing and reversing, taking care of chronic illnesses in particular and illness in general, illnesses that affect many, many people all around the world. My name is Meryl Fury. I am president and CEO of Plant-Based Nutrition Movement, and we are the hosts for our program today. Plant-Based Nutrition Movement, we call it PBNM for short, is a nonprofit organization originally based in the Chicagoland area and now all over the country because we are online. Our mission is to connect with individuals and communities to fight disease epidemics and pandemics by actively promoting the benefits of whole food plant-based eating. So like I said, come on in, get settled. We have a wonderful program created just for you this morning, all about heart health, COVID-19 mortality, and nutrition. Our keynote speaker is Dr. Kim Williams. I'm going to turn this over to our host. There's my clock in the background, pardon me. Our host in just a few moments. But first, let me introduce her. Cheryl Sweet Lady Dunlap is host of Soul Suite on 98.3 WRLR FM. Her show is a phenomenal mix of soul, jazz, and gospel music, as well as interviews with interesting people. Ms. Dunlap holds a master's in business administration and a master's in organizational development. And I do believe she's in school right now for another master's.
Yes, I am.
She began her plant-based journey during the COVID-19 lockdowns about a year ago. So, around March and April when everybody was sent home, she chose to take that time to really go deep, look inward, and see about taking care of her health. She's going to give you a little bit of her story today, and we are so honored to have her with us today. I'll see you again a little bit later for the cooking demo. In the meantime, Cheryl will take us through the rest of the program. Again, welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in, bring your friends. Cheryl, over to you.
Thank you so much, Meryl. Welcome to this amazing event. You will hear some phenomenal information. You will meet great people, and you will walk away with tools that will take you into an amazing new journey in your life. I am so grateful to be your host tonight and to introduce to you our next speaker. But real quickly, before I introduce the speaker, yes, I started on a plant-based lifestyle earlier in this year and was doing an amazing job. It has been, the results have been phenomenal. I've definitely had some failures and I've had some successes, but I'm definitely committed to stay on this journey. So I will be learning along with you, as well as growing along with you. I'm really excited to introduce our keynote speaker for today. He is an incredibly academically educated man and just a trailblazer in the industry of cardiology. I want to introduce to you Dr. Kim Allen Williams. He is the Chief Division of Cardiology at Rush University. He specializes in cardiology and the prevention, cardiology prevention. He's the president of the American College of Cardiology, president of the American Society of Nuclear Cardiology. He's the chairman of the board of directors of the Association of Black Cardiologists. He is the founder of the Urban Cardiology Initiative in Detroit and works with many communities here in Chicago, such as to reduce ethnic heart disparities in communities here in Chicago at Rush. He focuses on preventative cardiology and specializes in cardiovascular data. An amazing, amazing background. Um, he has spoken all over the world as well as the United States in regards to cardiology. In 2018, he has won amazing awards for lecturing in a variety of arenas over the past couple of years. He's been a cardiologist for over 30 years. And with the upcoming presentation that you are about to receive, a host of valuable information. So let's welcome Dr. Kim Williams.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the introduction and appreciate the opportunity to speak. It will be an interesting morning, hopefully, for the attendees. If you're not used to doing a lot of medical talks, this actually is a medical talk really to lay people. And my goal is to have you become a statistician and plant-based nutrition and to understand why. And then I've got one request for you all. If you listen to what I have to say and you're impressed by things that you weren't aware of, perhaps, you might want to jot some of it down. You might want to do some screen captures and then take the information to your doctor. Because I'm going to start off by saying that the leading cause of death of physicians, including cardiologists, is heart disease. And so we really do have to work on our physician community. And I'm actually using all of my patients on whom I'm consulting to go back to their referring physician and try to change their life and change their practice. We can crowdsource this thing. So anyway, I'm going to start talking specifically about cardiovascular risk factors. And this used to be a talk about nutrition and cardiovascular mortality, meaning dying of heart disease. And then COVID-19 happened. And one by one, all of our cardiovascular risk factors that I'm going to talk about, it turns out that they are the same risk factors for having a bad outcome with COVID-19. And so I'm going to go through that data just so that everyone's clear that we live in a dual pandemic. And yes, if we were to do the right thing with our lifestyle, the impact of both of them would be markedly diminished. So starting with COVID-19, everyone is really has understood this to be an issue of people who have underlying disease do much worse with COVID-19 than those people who are healthy and younger, for example. But heart disease, diabetes, this was really within the first couple of months, people recognized that those are the people who end up in the ICU on a ventilator and passing away. And then the data started to become even clearer that after a month or so here in Chicago, for example, it wasn't evenly distributed in terms of death. Everybody can get COVID, but not everybody was dying of COVID. And when you look at the Latinx community and the African American community, those were the blips. You saw it terribly in New York as well. And just in the first 4 months, there had been a lot of lives that were lost, and this ratio of African American to white has really not changed. And so it's, what is really driving it? It's risk factors. And so we're saying that really from the beginning that if you're doing plant-based nutrition, you have less obesity, diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, and cardiovascular disease, and therefore you have a better shot of having your immune system fix it. Okay, so then the data started to come out. People were putting all this data together. We did some at Rush. We did, and there are multiple publications all saying the same thing. And that is, you may not know what a hazard ratio is coming into this talk, but you're going to see so many hazard ratios. If something has no relationship to another, it's going to be a 1.0. If there was something that actually is reduced, it would be like less than 1. In this case, 22% reduction would be a 0.78. And so what this is really saying is that if you do all of the modeling, because everyone was saying that blacks were dying faster than whites. Well, it turns out it's not actually true. If you look at a model that includes every kind of risk factor that you can imagine, it turns out that being black was about an 11% protection from dying. The problem wasn't the race, the problem was the risk. And so what we needed to do was take our African American and our Latinx communities and get rid of the risk factors, and then the deaths would go away. And so ultimately, people realized that being Black was not associated with a higher death rate. If you adjust for all of the factors that lead to death, it wasn't about being Black. Well, I'm going to globalize this for a moment to talk about cardiovascular disease, which is, you know, what many of you came here to listen to, and point out the facts that really about 50% of African Americans actually have some form of cardiovascular disease, but it's a blight on our entire country. The amount of money that we spend each year on heart disease, we could wipe out all the student debt and everybody could go, you know, to college for free. There would be no limit to what we could accomplish as a country and a community if we were not saddled with this. And it really is, I'm going to try to convince you that it's a global problem. You can see it all over the world. You can see that people are eating unhealthy diets, not just in the United States, and numbers saying 11 million people died a few years ago because of what they ate and not doing too much sodium and not enough whole grains. And I wish I had caught you all before breakfast so we can increase the amount of fruits and vegetables that you're eating and lower the animal products. But let me get particular about this heart disease issue. I went into cardiology because of this curve. That is, when I was training in the early 70s, we was starting to see the beginning of all of this stuff going down, bypass surgery. And I was at Emory when Andreas Grunzik came in and started putting balloons inside of arteries. And everyone's heard of someone who's had a stent or someone who's had a angioplasty or bypass surgery. All of these things are amazing. But you know what? You're going to get to a point where you can develop all of these techniques and you're still going to have more heart disease than you have everything else. And it's not that we failed. I wouldn't say a 70% reduction in cardiovascular death in the United States over the last 40 years is a failure, but it really isn't where it didn't get us to where we wanted to go, point A. And point B, in about 2015, the decrease stopped. That is, you know, as inventive as we were, the population and their ability to develop disease really caught up with cardiology. And I really do have patients who come in to see me after a heart attack. And when they're coming in saying, "Doc, give me some pills so I can go back and do the things that got me to your office in the first place." And that's really where we need to change things. And let me just point out, when you look at that curve of going down, 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 and then the down going stops in 2015, same thing's happening in the Black community. Our getting down to a particular death rate is about 11 years later, and it's about a 21% increase in cardiovascular death in the African American community. And so I'm always telling that, you know, I mean, I wanted heart disease to be number 2, not with COVID. It did make it to number 2 because of COVID in 2020. But I wanted it to be because our African American population got down to just where everyone else is in the United States, horrifically high, but not 20% worse, and we would have gotten there. But everything that I've talked about so far was really about mopping up the floor instead of turning off the faucet. And so at some point, we have to deal with the cause of the disease, not just really fancy mops. Okay, I have to admit it. We have some fantastic mops in cardiology. Come to Rush, you will find the best mops ever. Okay, and we do stents and angioplasties, and you know, put in valves through the leg, and you know, radio frequency, you know, ablations and cryoablations. We do fantastic things, but we really, as a community, need to focus on preventing the illnesses so that Rush cardiology doesn't have as much to do. This is a problem all around. It was interesting that when Wall Street Journal wanted to talk about this, they really came out and talked about the African American experience, because we are dying at an earlier age than everyone else. And it really is these 4 factors, the same ones that hurt people with COVID: obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and high cholesterol. We have guidelines. It was great to be in the room with these 17 people and try to put guidelines together, and learned a lot from them, try to contribute a whole lot of dietary stuff. But, you know, if people make a choice to smoke, they choose what to eat. They choose whether or not they're going to have their blood pressure monitored and managed. And these are choices that everyone makes every day. What I try to tell my patients is that you're not making, unless you live alone and you're independently wealthy, you are interconnected with other people. You have a family. You have people who, if you have a stroke, they're going to have to take off of their job to go take care of you. So you're impoverishing your entire family. whoever in your community, in your church. The pastor is trying to run around and take care of people in the hospitals, can get overwhelmed. Why don't we take our own responsibility and do pay attention to these 7 things? And if we do that, then that really is, personal responsibility. Okay. I want to talk a little bit, you're going to see me going back and forth because of the interlacing of heart disease and COVID. I'm going to go back and forth between COVID and cardiovascular disease. And one of the studies that was published just last week talked about smoking and weight. And we hadn't focused on the smoking before, but it really does worsen COVID illness because it does have an underlying lung issue that is really what's taking people out. As everyone knows, you can put someone on a ventilator, you can turn them upside down, so-called proning, and you can make them better, but there's still going to be an extremely high death rate. It's not the 80% that it was in New York and really good places, people dying. At Rush, it was way lower than that. We were down in the single digits for deaths, but that's because we had so many different techniques. But the best thing to do isn't to rely on the fanciness of the hospital that you end up at, but to rely on the fact that you can control whether or not you're overweight, your body mass index more than 30, meaning that you're obese, and whether or not you're smoking. Okay, so focusing on our obesity epidemic based on that is something that's happening in the United States. When you look at the data for COVID-19, you get numbers like this, 3.68. Remember that hazard ratio, and I was talking about, 1.2, that's a 20%. Well, 368, that's a 368% increase. This is of having a likelihood of somebody having a really bad outcome if they're overweight, a body mass index of over 25, not even obese at 30, but if you're overweight at all. So the time to lose the weight is now, and hopefully we're at the tail end of this pandemic. But the fact that we have so much obesity is why the United States leads the world in COVID deaths. No one talks, well, actually they do talk about it, but they talk about it for a second, and then they move on to the next aspect of the news. But there are multiple, hopefully those of you who are interested in the biochemistry and the immunology will take a screen capture of this slide. But the fact of the matter is that obesity ruins your immune system. And so these unhealthy meals, red meat, unhealthy fats, sugary drinks, and not enough fruits and vegetables. And this has been going on for decades. And this was published just a few days ago. It was very disappointing. We thought that we were getting the message out. I always joke that, I never mind if people don't pay attention to guidelines unless I wrote them. So I take it very personally that people are not actually listening about our message from the American College of Cardiology about fruits and vegetables. And apparently it's really not happening. This publication was very sad, done by the federal government, asking people to just do 2 to 3 cups of vegetables per day. And it turns out that 90% of Americans do not do this. It's just so disappointing. Okay, so what do we get instead? This is our obesity map. So your body mass index, and for those of you who aren't, I'll keep referring to that, the BMI, body mass index, that is your your weight divided by your height in the metric system. And anything above 30 means that you're obese. If you're above 35, you're really obese. And if you look at the number of people who are obese, the darker states, the darker you are, the more obese people you have, more than 35% of the population. That is the kind of thing that you all know if you travel the country, that there are parts of the country that are worse than others. And then you have some places where, a bunch of young executives and going in and out of Congress in DC and people being healthier in Colorado because they're skiing all the time. There are places where it's less, but there are places in sort of Midwest and South where the obesity problem is really bad. Okay, so you've seen this picture, right? I'm going to divide it up ethnically. Okay, so that is much better looking picture. And that's if you look at the non-Hispanic white adults. If you look at the number of dark states, it's just a handful. The number of dark states, if you take in just the Hispanic population, is much higher, 2 to 3 times higher. If you look at the Black population, it's almost the entire country. And so at some point, we have to look at our community, look at what are the things that are contributing to this, and see if we can't do something about it. Why? This is why. I think it's our patriotic duty to do something about this curve. We have a terrible life expectancy. In terms of developed countries on this planet, we have the worst outcomes, and we spend more money than anyone else. And I just hope everyone just stares this and says, I'm going to change this. I'm an American. I'm going to change this. I'm going to be this person who lives like they're in Japan or something. Not going to cost the system very much with my own personal choices. And I'm going to live a long, productive life and see my grandkids graduate from college. These are choices that we make every day with our foods. Okay, and here they are. And I'm not saying it's totally everyone's fault, because there's a marketing issue that we have. And this marketing is very powerful. And if you look at how unhealthy foods are distributed in this country, you are really appalled by it. And then we have a large focus on weight loss and trying to make it better. And you get all these mixed messages. And so the Atkins people, which I'll talk about in a bit, tells you to eat nothing but animal products. And then Dean Ornish, the vegetarian guy, would tell you to eat nothing but vegetables. Well, which one of them works? Yeah, doing plant-based nutrition actually does better sustained weight loss when you look at the same people done in a randomized trial by Bree Turner McGreevy. The plant-based diet is going to be the winner. Moving on from obesity to correlates and having diabetes and having high blood pressure, everybody expects that you're going to get them, you're going to go and have them managed, and you're going to try to deal with all the complications. Well, how about prevention? We actually have good data that vegetarian diets, and that is, there are a variety of vegetarian diets. People who are half vegetarian, people who are vegetarian but they still eat fish. Then there's the ovo-lacto, and a fair number of those, because I'm showing you Adventist health studies, and the Adventists actually do were telling people for decades to do eggs and milk. Now they're changing their tune after they saw all of their 30-year outcomes, that the vegans, people who ate no animal products, were doing so much better. They were the only group that on average was not overweight, body mass index, again, greater than 25. They were the lowest amount of diabetes, the lowest amount of hypertension. And there was a big impact on death rate, about a 30% decrease. That's a hazard ratio of 0.7 for dying of heart disease of any kind. And if you looked at what happened over time, it seemed like their older people were getting more and more vegan, and the people who were not vegan were not around much anymore. And so that really is a very telling curve. Bottom line of their studies is that if you do a vegetarian diet, you're going to live almost a decade longer. You're going to be 30 pounds lighter, less disease, more life in your life. And so this is an opportunity for everyone to change to a diet that's going to not just enhance their weight and disease states, but actually feel better about themselves. Let's talk specifically about blood pressure, because almost everyone's blood pressure, if you don't have some specific disease that's causing it, so-called secondary hypertension, if you don't have a disease that's causing it, it's pretty much your diet. And people are eating too much sodium, and they're eating too much saturated fat, and they're overweight. And when you do a dietary intervention, like a vegan diet, you can get some massive decreases in blood pressure. And so this is the famous DASH trial. And you could just see starting off blood pressure in the 130s, ending up in the low 120s. When you do a diet that's low in fat and cholesterol, that would be much more of a vegetarian diet. So our 2017 American College of Cardiology guidelines were published, and we were the ones who changed the definition of high blood pressure from 140 to 130. And of course, we were accused of being in the pocket of the drug companies. That just meant that they didn't read the document, because this is what we were pushing. Non-pharmacologic. That means no drugs unless you absolutely need them. And what we're talking about is things that people should be doing all the time. So at least 150 minutes of exercise. And if you add these together, I'm telling all my patients to do 300 minutes. Aerobic exercise, dynamic resistance, that's like doing weights, and isometric resistance like Pilates and planks and that sort of thing. Each one of them has a drop in blood pressure of 5 millimeters or 4 millimeters. Cutting back on the alcohol, that also lowers the blood pressure. losing weight. Everyone should please remember your sodium on a daily basis should be no more than 1,500 milligrams. And if you're and get the potassium as high as possible, that's actually very easy to do these two if you're doing this. And that is a heart healthy diet. It's rich in fruits and vegetables and whole grains. That in and of itself will get you 11 millimeters off your blood pressure. So if you add up all of those things, you can get 20, 30, 40 millimeters of mercury off your blood pressure. Who needs medication if you do the right thing with your lifestyle? I'm going to talk about diabetes for a moment. People don't realize that refined grains like white bread are treated like by the body just like sugar, of any variety of sugar, including fruit sugar. The fruit sugar is healthy if it's in the fruit. If you take it out and you make like high fructose corn syrup, which you'll see in everything, including barbecue sauce and and even ketchup. When you take that in, you get a spike in blood sugar, but you also get a spike in insulin. And insulin is not our friend in cardiology. It creates badness in the cholesterol and badness in the blood pressure, and it creates diabetes, all of which make plaque, or so-called atherosclerosis. Those plaques are the bane of our existence. It's what we spend all of our time trying to open up, get rid of the plaque, squeezing it, bypassing it. If we could change the underlying causes, we could have much better outcomes and so much fewer heart attacks, stroke, peripheral artery disease, erectile dysfunction, aortic aneurysms, which people think, wait a minute, that's where your aorta gets enlarged. That is still a manifestation of atherosclerosis. It weakens the wall, and then the high blood pressure balloons out the thing, and people die of aneurysms. It's all really the same disease, just one form will narrow it. You get a narrowing in one place and an enlargement in another place. It's still the same disease. So don't sugarcoat it. Eating sugar will actually mess up your cholesterol, give you diabetes, particularly if you're not doing the exercise well, and it increases inflammation. Now, many of you have actually heard about cholesterol causing heart disease. Most people have. Then not as many people have heard the data from Harvard, from Paul Ricker, that inflammation causes heart disease just as much as cholesterol does. And so you'll see, now most people actually have heard this. You hear that, I got the flu and it gave me a heart attack. Flu shots decrease heart attacks in a community by 60%. That you get a dental abscess and you end up with a heart attack. Those are all examples of inflammation. And COVID-19 does the same thing. The more inflammation you have, the higher your heart attack risk. Well, just drinking a sugary drink increases your inflammation markers, such as C-reactive protein. So it's something that we really don't need to add to our bodies. And this is the data. You know what your hazard ratio is. You know it should be 1.0. And when you get about 12, 13% of your diet being sugar, then you start to see the increase in death rate. And the more sugar you do, the more you die. So let's back off of it. We actually had this data for a long time in our nurses' health study. They said, okay, what's making 30 years of outcomes of nurses' health study? What makes nurses die? Number one was getting older. Yeah, we probably could have figured that one out. But number two was actually diabetes. Number three was smoking. But in the upper right-hand corner here, there was dietary stuff. You eat fiber, your risk of dying goes down by 16%. You eat a hamburger, cholesterol goes up by 17%. But people kind of ignored this for the longest time, that a sugary drink, or a donut increased your death rate more than eating a cholesterol item, such as a hamburger or a steak. And so something that was buried in the literature, and then it started to become much more recognized as more data sets started looking at long-term consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages, increasing death rate. The numbers get really bad. They're worse for actual sugar than they are for artificial sweeteners, but artificial sweeteners do the same thing, just not quite as bad. Here's another hazard ratio for you. Please don't be a high consumer of artificially sweetened beverages, because you can get some very high increase in risk of dying. When you look at diabetes, though, and so many of our patients are diabetic. Is there anything that we can do about it? Well, first of all, you can prevent it by doing plant-based nutrition. And there's a good curve here that shows that hazard ratio going down, 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 the more plant-based you are. So it's very simple. It's exactly what the US government was trying to tell people: eat more fruits and vegetables, and you will see a lower rate of these risk factors, including diabetes. Okay, so once you are diabetic, does it make any sense to change your diet? You bet. Every diabetic in the group listening today knows that you're supposed to be following your hemoglobin A1C, and your hemoglobin A1C will fall with a vegetarian diet. The one that didn't work so well was the lacto-vegetarian, because the milk is actually not good for you, but the low-fat vegan diet consistently lowers the hemoglobin A1C. I threw this one in there because not everybody recognizes that sick people feel sick. It sounds like silly, but it's actually very true. And the sense of well-being is actually lowered when you're sick. And so a plant-based diet actually does, if you do an intervention in a diabetic, you get an improvement of the emotional well-being, not just the physical, less depression, better quality of life, better overall health, as well as the stuff that you would imagine, hemoglobin A1C, weight, cholesterol, and overall risk. So bottom line is diabetes is associated with the things that we eat, particularly refined carbohydrates, but also red meat. And if we avoid the saturated fat, for example, from animals, that increases both cholesterol and increases weight so efficiently, we can actually lower our diabetes rate. Everybody should be a thin, walking, everyday vegetarian, and this diabetes issue would go away. Okay, going to talk a little bit about fat because this is highly controversial. You see it all the time. People say that saturated fat is actually good for you. Nothing could be further from the truth, except trans fats, which are now illegal in 4 countries. So I don't have to talk about it much anymore because the United States is now one of them. But monounsaturated fat and polyunsaturated fats, mostly from vegetable sources, actually do decrease the death rate, hazard ratio of 0.73. That's a 27% reduction if people would just be conscious of what kind of fat they're going to eat. Now, there are plenty of vegan people who are saying you shouldn't eat any fat at all. The fat you eat is the fat you wear. That's actually true. And so, but we're talking about in terms of your cholesterol, in terms of overall mortality, the data, if you're going to eat fat, it should not be saturated fat, which means lessening the animals. This one came out, the Pure trial a few years ago, and shocked the world, saying that eating fat was actually better for you than carbohydrates. They finally did correct it. They're friends of mine. I said, guys, you buried it in the methods. The problem was carbohydrates, that is starches, breads. If you're doing them with whole grains, it's good. And if you're doing them with refined grains, that white bread, the pretzels, the bagels, then they turn right into sugar and generate the insulin, as we said a few slides ago. And so, yeah, they were talking about replacing carbohydrates with fats was going to lower the death rate. Yeah, that's because refined grains are actually poisonous, essentially. And so, yes, dietary fats are better if you're going to have, if your body can tolerate it. Yes, eating more healthy fats, olive oil and the like, is going to be better than saturated fats. Okay, I'm going to switch over and talk about cholesterol and inflammation. And this is another sad realization. This was a little later, so this is like 4 or 5 months into the pandemic, when we realized that high cholesterol actually was helping the COVID-19 virus get into the cells. It actually uses cholesterol to get into the cells. So if a person is running around with a high cholesterol level and they get COVID, they're going to get more serious infection, because instead of just running around the bloodstream harmlessly, it's actually going to go into cells, particularly fat cells, where they can reproduce. Does cholesterol get affected by what you eat? Absolutely. The more animal products you eat, you're getting a massive amount of cholesterol. And there's essentially zero cholesterol in any plant-based foods. And egg whites are actually pretty good in terms of being low cholesterol. Great. Only problem is people are eating egg whites with egg yolks, and it's a massive amount of cholesterol. The only thing that's worse than egg yolks is brains. And I know A lot of people whose families are from the South, they actually ate brains, hoping that everyone is tamping down on that. Can you intervene on your cholesterol and your inflammation with diet? Absolutely. And this is one of the first studies in the Journal of American Medical Association, 2003, showing that if you did an intervention with a plant-based diet and with fiber and soy protein and nuts, in this case almonds, that you would see a dramatic fall in LDL cholesterol. And if you took a statin, you'd also see a dramatic fall. And when you compare the results between the statin and the vegan diet, they were almost identical. The C-reactive protein went down, the LDL cholesterol went down. And so this would lower people's risk tremendously. That anti-inflammatory stuff has actually been reproduced, published just a couple of years ago, showing that the American Heart Association, very proud of the American Heart Association to publish a study saying that their diet was terrible, but they knew that they should move on because they did work with us on the guidelines. But a vegan diet lowers your inflammation as well as your cholesterol and your weight and your blood pressure and your blood sugar, where you don't get that kind of effect with the American Heart Association diet because it has animal products, less red meat, more fish, more chicken, still not helping, and not as much as it could be. Okay, if we look at cholesterol and cholesterol interventions, have to admit that unlike what you've heard in the literature, the cholesterol doesn't matter what you eat, it's your genes. That is just completely not true. When you do an intervention to lower LDL cholesterol with a vegan diet, it's very successful in most cases. And the data is just a massive amount of it. And so it's only people who are pushing cholesterol consumption, such as the Egg Board or Cattlemen's Association, they're the ones going around saying that there is no relationship between cholesterol and what you eat. Nothing could be further from the medical truth. I'm going to talk about some of the patterns that we see, particularly for our audience. And I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and so when they say Southern diet, I'm thinking south of Roosevelt, because that is exactly the kinds of things that we were eating on the south side of Chicago. But being respectful to the authors, this was talking about, the Regards trial is talking about the Southern dietary pattern in the stroke belt. This is University of Alabama, Birmingham, but it's in northern cities as well. And what you see is a survivor plot over several years of adults with risk factors eating that Southern diet, which is like the fried chicken, putting ham hocks, neck bones in the greens, not yams, but candied yams, sugar sweetened beverages, and the like, and a lot of organ meats, the chitlins and the like. And if you eat these things, for all of the reasons that I've been talking about for the last 30 minutes, you end up with this burden of heart disease, burden of kidney disease, and stroke. It turns out that we now have good amounts of data that what is it about that diet that kills people. So what you're seeing here is increase in deaths, and each one it has its own cut point. How much do you have to do in order to die? Well, for sodium, it's 2,000 milligrams a day. And so our recommendation of less than 1,500 makes sense. Not enough nuts and seeds. High processed meats. I hope everybody captures that high is defined as any, greater than 0, okay? So processed meat, which would be like lunch meat, bacon, ham, hot dogs, sausages, they should essentially be never events in the human diet. Okay, not enough seafood. Why does seafood come out as a good thing? Because when you replace other types of red meat, particularly processed meat, with seafood, people do better. Doesn't mean that it's good for you. It just means that if somebody's going to force you to take cyanide or arsenic, you're better off with the arsenic. That's what this is saying. Not enough vegetables, not enough fruit. Oh, sugar sweetened beverages. How much is safe? 0. Okay, so I'm hoping that everyone will toss those right out of their refrigerator along with the bacon and the ham. Okay. Have to shout out to so many people nowadays who have changed their diet because of animal rights concerns or the society or greenhouse gases and have gone to a vegetarian diet. but it's not a healthy vegetarian diet. There's juices, and they're juicing. A lot of people are thinking that it's helping them, but when you get rid of the pulp, you're actually taking too much sugar. Refined grains, taking a potato is great, but taking a potato and frying it is not so great. And so when you look at that all together as an unhealthful plant-based diet, you see an increase in death rate. And that dotted line, that hazard ratio, is actually worse than eating animals. And so you might be saving the environment, but not saving yourself. So hopefully people will understand that when we're talking about a vegan or vegetarian diet, we're talking about a whole food plant-based diet, not junk food. Okay. More data that was published just a few days ago talking about people not eating enough grains and eating refined grains instead, and seeing hazard ratios just to what you'd expect based on what I've mentioned so far. The more refined grains you eat, the more cardiovascular disease you're going to get. I'm going to spend the last few minutes talking about some of the damaging data that has come out with keto diets, because everybody's doing them to try to lose weight. They're very effective in causing weight loss. But if you just Google the phrase keto diet mortality, you see all this data come up. This is from Greece, saying it's a 22% increase in death. This is from Japan, saying that it's a 31% increase in death. This is from the United States, saying that it's an 18% increase in death if you do the red, if you're eating keto with animals, and an 18% decrease if you're doing it with plants. And so it's not the keto diet that's the problem. The problem is the animal products that you're using to do the keto diet. Okay, the more keto you are, the higher the death rate. And if you've had a heart attack in the past, the increase in your death rate of 53% is something no one really should be doing a keto diet unless it's done with plants. If you're trying to explain this to somebody, tell them this two things. And this is the lipids, which is your cholesterol, and the inflammation. And those markers are worsened significantly, and that's associated with increase down the road, heart attack, stroke, and death. And so the science is very clear. Their cholesterol, in some of my patients, the cholesterol would actually triple when they would do a keto diet doing bacon and eggs. So we have really good National Lipid Association folks who put together an article saying exactly what happens when you do this diet. And yeah, if you lose a lot of weight, your blood sugar will go down. And that's what they're bragging about, that it controls diabetes. Yeah, but at the cost of heart disease, it isn't worth it. What's the wrong with it? It's got eggs. And the more eggs you eat, the more you die. And so it takes only about a half an egg consumed per day to increase the mortality rate. And another publication from just a few weeks ago confirmed it in a completely different population. The more eggs and cholesterol you're eating, the more people die, and cancer mortality, not just cardiovascular disease. And it's something that everyone should be aware of, because there's such great articles or advertisements saying that people should eat eggs when it really isn't true. The other side of it is the red meat. We've had this data for years. This is 2012, almost 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, saying that the more red meat you eat, the more you die, and it's cardiovascular disease and cancer. That is dose related. And people who say moderation have to realize that the biggest jump in the death rate is between 0 and 1 serving per day. We have massive amounts of data from Harvard, the Physicians' Health Study, our Nurses' Health Study, all of them saying that there are no safe animal products. The best thing to do to substitute for red meat would be like soy protein and plant-based proteins and nuts and legumes. Those actually do work pretty well. Talk about the Mediterranean diet for a moment, because it's very famous, New England Journal of Medicine. And it's one of the strangest things in my medical career, where people will look at these survival plots and say, oh, look at that, controlled diet died this much. If you did the Mediterranean diet, you died this much. Well, they were actually talking about heart attack, stroke, and death all together. And they're talking about a 30% reduction if you get rid of the red meat and go with extra virgin olive oil or nuts with fish and a little chicken here and there. Sounds good, right? Except for the panel B. Panel B has been there with every publication saying the same thing, that the death rate, the total mortality, wasn't different between the three diets. And if you blow up the right-hand table, what you see is that the big difference was in stroke. And if I was a neurology doctor, I'd feel pretty good about this. But as a cardiologist, noticing that the diet does not change the heart attacks, doesn't change cardiac death, and doesn't change all-cause death means that this is a worthless diet, and it shouldn't be labeled by U.S. News and World Report as the #1 diet for human health. Now, they're friends of mine too. And I kind of said, guys, you're talking about, why didn't you look at a vegetarian diet? And they said, well, we kind of did. And they went back and analyzed their data. And I hope everybody captures this. This is that same data I just showed you, but it's turned on its side. And that is, instead of how people were randomized, they said, how many vegetables did you eat? And the people in the top quintile, as it's called, because they divided them into 5 groups, the top quintile actually ate the most vegetables, very little animal products. They had a 40% reduction in death. And so the Mediterranean diet works just fine, as long as you don't eat any of the animals. There are plenty of Mediterranean style foods, including the nuts and the olive oil, that seem to be associated with longer life expectancy, as long as you don't eat the animal products. Okay, so last week there was a nice publication specifically about this, Mediterranean versus vegan. Congratulations to Neil Barnard, showing that a low-fat vegan diet did so much better for all of the risk factors and the weight. And I started this group at the nutrition group of the American College of Cardiology. So this, of course, was going back and forth between the Mediterranean people and the vegans, back and forth. Bottom line is, yeah, people did better with the vegan diet. And that's because it doesn't have animal protein. That's all there is to it. This data has been out there. Hopefully everybody can just stare at this title for a moment, because you're going to laugh at this in a minute. Journal of American Medical Association, looking at that title, animal versus plant protein, showing that if you have any risk factors, doctors and nurses, then there are no safe animal products. Let me blow that up. That is, you will, the fish and the chicken and the dairy, 6 to 8% increase in death. Eggs would be worse than red meat. Processed red meat is worse than everything, okay? Well, here it is again, 3 years later, published, same journal, same title, but this is from Japan, and it said the same thing. If you want to avoid cardiovascular disease, you avoid red meat, chicken, fish, and this decrease in death is for every 3% of plant protein that you substitute for animal protein. So then, whoa, they published it again? Completely different group. This is another National Institutes of Health data, same journal, same title. Again, just substituting in their model plant protein for animal protein, saying a decrease but it wasn't just heart disease. It was cancer as well, stroke, respiratory disease. Thus, there is, and every red meat, every egg protein, they all contribute to death of our population, death and illness. Okay, so where should you get your protein? Well, turns out that if you want to have your best outcome and have the hazard ratios be on the left side, meaning that you've improved your outcome, what you really want to do to avoid heart attack and stroke and heart failure is to do plant-based diet. Now, I know everybody can't eat a tofu beast, but it's really important for everybody to recognize that vegetables do have a lot of protein, that beef and peanuts are the same, egg whites are less than quinoa, and soy and lentils and chickpeas actually have more protein than chicken. So people talking about eating animal protein to get their protein, it's just scientifically not true. And you end up with this compound, trimethylamine N oxide. Okay, so that is what happens when you eat animal products, and then you have your GI tract has bacteria in them that are really bad for you because you ate dead animals, and those bacteria make a compound that gets turned by your liver into trimethylamine N oxide. Please write down those 4 letters and look into it. By the time you're done Googling it, you will be a vegetarian, because it'll make you realize that it's making the plaque grow, rupturing the plaques, and then your platelets, which some of you have heard of, taking aspirin so your aspirin will stop your platelets from aggregating and causing heart attacks and strokes. Well, you're ruining your aspirin with your TMAO level is high because you ate animals. It also is associated with heart failure. And so the heart failure is important because we have data that says when you have heart failure, which is so ubiquitous in the Black community, particularly, you get about a 41% decrease in heart failure if you do a vegetarian diet. And so that plant-based diet decreases heart failure. The Southern diet particularly increases it. But that we've had this data. It's not just our community. It's all over the world. The more processed and unprocessed meat you eat, the more heart failure you get. I want to focus just for a minute, because I want to leave some time for questions and answers about the microbiome. This is something that has all of a sudden became really important. The data I was showing you from Cleveland Clinic about the GI tract and the bacteria and eating dead animals, and the same bacteria that make that meat rot are actually inside your gut if you eat that meat before it rots. And you may cook it, but it still changes your microbiome. And it turns out that a publication just a few weeks ago indicated that it was the microbiome that was causing all the COVID illness. And so if people are eating a vegetarian diet, they have the GI tract bacteria that are actually more amenable to not having a ridiculous immune response and all that cytokine storm that people have, and the increase in the inflammatory markers that takes people out with COVID. So this is finally a good explanation of why it is that vegans don't tend to get serious COVID illness. They all get it if they're exposed, but they don't get very sick. And if anybody, please let me know if you know of a vegan who actually got hospitalized with COVID. So far, my count is 0. That doesn't mean it's safe. That means that you become an asymptomatic carrier. So please do the distancing and masking, because it's still a dangerous disease for somebody who's not a vegan. Okay. So no question that when you change to a vegetarian diet, you will change your microbiome completely. The more animal products you eat, the more these bacteroides species you get, which really are associated with worse outcome. I want to spend just a minute talking about kidneys and hearts together, because it's a big deal that when you're eating animal protein, you're actually attacking your kidneys. And I'd left this out of my talks for decades, knowing, because I had written one of the original articles on it a long time ago, but it's time to put it back in, because the data is so overwhelming that when you eat animal protein, it's toxic to kidneys. It increases the progression from chronic kidney disease to kidney failure and going on dialysis. And people do not generally die of kidney disease. They die of heart disease when they have kidney disease. And so red meat increases the risk of going on dialysis. The data is very clear. And so we add that to our list of many things of why people shouldn't be eating red meat. So diabetes, stroke, sure. Heart failure, sure. Let's add kidney disease to that list. We have multiple mechanisms. One, if you want to do a screen capture, one of them that we should point out is heme iron, because you now see that in some of the plant-based milks or plant-based meat, particularly the Impossible Burger, and hopefully they'll change that. I know that's what makes it taste bloody, and that makes it test well, but it isn't particularly healthy, because heme iron does increase plaque. It produces plaque and then upsets plaque, makes those plaques unstable. I'm going to spend my last minute before opening it up for questions talking about doing an intervention in our community. And I was very privileged to work with President Obama's old church about trying to implement our ACC guidelines, fruits and vegetables, nuts, whole grains. We skip the fish, of course, because we know that increases mortality a smaller amount, but it still does increase mortality. Trying to replace all the saturated fat, get rid of the sodium and cholesterol, and avoid the processed meat. And of course, there's no trans fats in the United States, hopefully anymore. That nutrition intervention actually went pretty well. We asked people to go on a vegan diet that we supplied them for 5 weeks and just watch what happened. Their insulin levels fell. Their TMAO levels fell. Their LDL cholesterol, the bad stuff, went down substantially. Blood sugar, their weight, everything. One of the smallest ones was the hemoglobin A1C we talked about for diabetes. That was really highly significant because that little tiny change happened in everybody. It was pretty amazing. So just 5 weeks is all it took. We had pretty good completion rate, really decent adherence, and the risk factors that we measured were so much better that when you put them into our little risk calculator, we found that people were dramatically better. We were actually able to eliminate about 19% of the risk, provided they continued it for a 10-year period. 19% of that 21% increase in risk in African American adults that I'm always trying to get rid of. We got a lot of press, but what we need is people to really pay attention to the message that is changing your diet will change your risk. I want to please take a capture of this one, if you will. It's the Heart and Soul cookbook put out by the Association of Black Cardiologists. It came out just a few months ago, and it's a good way to start your plant-based journey. So in summary, as I open it up for questions, we are living in a dual pandemic, no question about it. And we need to advocate for risk factor reduction because those risk factors are leading to the issues that we're struggling with that are cardiovascular as well as COVID. And so please, everybody, think through every food choice that you're making. With every meal, you're determining what your outcome is going to be, and your outcome affects your family and your community and your country. And so, we can spend all of our money on healthcare if we want, instead of education and roads and bridges. But I think it's everyone's patriotic duty to be a vegan. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kim Williams. That was a lot of information, and many people watching. Thank you so much. It was so much information in such a short time. So thank you for sharing a lot of awareness. With what little time we have left, I have a number of questions, but I saw a consistent question about how many grams of fiber should one consume a day?
So actually, it turns out that for every 6 grams of fiber, that there's like a 15% decrease in mortality. So there should be, I would say, do as much fiber as you can. It turns out that the fiber is actually changing the microbiome. That is, the bacteria that break down the fiber and get the nutrients out of it, those are the good ones. Those are the ones that don't create inflammation. So please, I wouldn't say, how much do you need? I would say, how much can you consume?
Okay. There is just another question I was curious about, because we hear a lot about alkaline diets versus acidity. Can you speak about, are alkaline diets healthy?
Yeah.
And is that something we should consider?
So if you look at, this is a good one that everyone should do with their search engine, and do alkaline diet outcomes or mortality or heart attack, you'll see that there's zero data. And so do I turn green with envy sometimes when I see that somebody's got zero data and they're marketing it and making millions? I figure, gosh, I could start that scholarship fund for Chicago Public School to go to University of Chicago if I'd had some idea like that where I could make massive amount of money off of zero data. Because as far as I can tell, there is no data. And you'll probably see that on the little disclaimer on the little, on all of the supplements. There is no data that this actually fixes any disease. On the other hand, an acidic diet, if you're talking about the acids of animal protein, that's really important. And people don't realize that dairy has, with that animal protein being buffered by the calcium out of your bones, that dairy can actually worsen your bones. They don't realize the data on breakdown of animal protein, so that it's toxic to kidneys, as I mentioned a few slides ago. I'm hoping that everybody will realize that a whole food plant-based diet, not really a gimmick, is what we really should be doing.
Okay, my last question, because I know you have to go, detox. We see a lot of information about detox. Is it important to even start this journey of a plant-based diet with the detox?
So there's a couple of different types of detox, and people are talking about water fasting as a detox. Water fasting actually does have data for weight loss. The problem is that you really have to associate it with a behavioral change, because people will just, they'll lose 30 pounds and then they'll just rebound back to it. Then you're talking about detox in terms of just a whole food plant-based diet. Yeah, well, people should be doing that whole food plant-based diet anyway. Though the other one that people talk about would be, doing, colon cleansing and things like that as part of their detox. There really isn't a lot of good data for that. But I have to say that even though it's something well, I'm vegan for 20 years, so I probably wouldn't come up with me, but I would say that the more data that we have on the microbiome being important, and there was even it sounds really strange to say this in public, but there was actually a medical study showing that you can improve people's health by infusing the feces of a vegan into a non-vegan. Just for the reason that I was just talking about, that is they actually do have better bacteria in their GI tract.
Wow.
And so, if this is true, then I'm saying that all these people who've been pushing colonics for years, now is the time to go and get data and actually prove that it works. Because we've done so many things in medicine that made sense, and then they turned out that they didn't work. What's the most recent one? Probably the HDL cholesterol. We've ever heard that that's so healthy for you, and the higher it is. Well, it turns out the higher your HDL cholesterol, the more you have heart attacks. We had that wrong for 60 years. So that's just one of many examples. And I would say, putting oxygen on people with a heart attack, totally a bad idea. And so what I'm saying is that, in God we trust, everybody else bring data. Okay. And so those people doing those colonics, if you're changing the microbiome and making people better, let's collect some data and show that it's true. All right.
Thank you so much for a phenomenal presentation and taking the time with us.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Wow, what a phenomenal presentation, and so many more questions that I had to ask him, but I learned a lot. And I feel like, after this, I will definitely do a lot of research. We have plenty of terms to Google. But if you have any more questions about this event, make sure that you reach out to us. And as you're watching, you will see the email address come across the screen. So the next portion of our event today, we're going to talk with, we're going to have a community roundtable, and we're going to talk to some people within the community that have embraced a vegan lifestyle. And so I want to start with speaking with Miss Vivian Brown. And Miss Vivian Brown, hello. She is absolutely gorgeous. And she has been a vegan for quite some time. We have Miss Gwendolyn Honduras with us, and she is a vegan. Hi, Gwen. And we have Rob Chapman, who is also a vegan. And so they are all vegans at different stages. So you'll have an opportunity with this conversation to speak with people who are in different stages of this journey as long as myself. So we're going to start with Miss Vivian Brown. You have been a vegan for 3 years, correct?
Yes, going on 4 years. About September, it will probably be 4 years.
Okay, 4 years. And what made you start with a vegan lifestyle? Besides the obvious, what was that pivotal point in your life where you're like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to commit?
Well, thank you for inviting me to tell my story. And actually, I don't have enough time to tell you all the good things that have happened since I've changed my diet. But at the time, I was weighing about 190, 199. And I had been to Whole Foods shopping, and as I was approaching my front door, I had 2 bags of groceries filled with grass-fed chicken and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I started to feel very bad. So I went into my home, set the 2 bags down at my front door, and I felt my chest about right here, and I felt a pounding, a racing. And so I said, AFib. And I knew that I had to go to the emergency room. I was trying to decide if I should go to the emergency room or urgent care. I ended up at urgent care. After I put my groceries away. And as soon as I got there and they set me on the table, I was in an ambulance on my way to the hospital, to the emergency room.
Right.
So that was the Saturday before Mother's Day. So I stayed in the hospital for 2 days. And when I left there, my liver enzymes were 672 and 543. They told me I had to go on beta blockers and blood thinners and a couple other medications, or otherwise I was going to have a stroke or a heart attack or a blood clot or something like that. Well, my granddaughter came and picked me up, and I went to Walgreens and told them to restock the medication because I wouldn't be taking it. So I knew that I had to take this seriously.
Yeah.
So I found a doctor in Wheaton, Illinois, who put me on a raw food plant-based diet. And I'm telling you, that was the beginning of my healing. And I learned about plant-based diet and doctors from attending that doctor's office, and in his waiting room, he would play forks over knives and eating third edition. Well, I became very interested, and I came home and went on YouTube and went to Amazon and purchased all the books. And that was in May. In August, my husband became very ill. Well, he had been ill, actually. I became aware that he was very ill, and he had end-stage congestive heart failure. So I was reading Anderson's book, and it said no matter how old you were at the time, my husband was 86, plant-based diet would help. So I put him on a plant-based diet, and unbeknownst to my raw food doctor, I was eating the foods that I was preparing for my husband, and that started my journey. And I'm telling you, within a year, I had dropped 50 pounds, and I was not on the diet to lose weight. And this is the first time in my recent adult history that I've been able to keep weight off without going on a diet. And so that started my journey with plant-based diet. So I knew I had to leave the other doctor, and I went plant-based 100%. I visited Dr. John McDougall in 2019, and last year I visited Goldhammer Center, and also in California.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing your testimony. You know, I wanted to, as you were talking, I wondered, was it difficult? You know, most of us have spent most of our life eating meat.
It was overwhelming at first.
Yeah.
All that food, because remember, I had a very sick husband, and I was preparing for him and preparing the diet, the raw food diet with that other doctor. And at first it's overwhelming, and it's going to be overwhelming, but stick with it. Now it's just as easy. It's my new normal. It's just as easy as the other. Matter of fact, it's more pleasurable. All the new foods I am cooking, all the new recipes I'm finding, it's just very pleasurable. And I feel better now today than I did when I was 40 years old.
Really?
Yes, I do.
Wow.
Birthday coming up soon.
And on your birthday, you will be? Do you mind sharing?
80 years old.
Oh my gosh.
80 years old. And by the way, I also visited Dr. Kim, because when I left that hospital in 2017, my liver enzymes were 640, 672, and 543. I visited Dr. Kim Williams to find out where my heart was after I had been on the plant-based diet for a little bit over a year. And actually, I didn't have to go back. My numbers were so good, and I didn't have. And also, while I was there, I decided to check out my see where my liver was at Rush Presbyterian. My liver enzymes were 10 and 22 from 542 and 672.
Oh, wow. Okay, Vivian, people are asking the name of your doctor that you mentioned in Wheaton.
Dr. What's his name?
The doctor that you are seeing that put you on the raw
on
diet.
Raw food diet. Let me think of his name. Dr. Nemec, Nemec, at the Total Health Institute.
At the Total Health Institute. I've heard of that place.
Dr. Nemec, yes. That's the one I went to, and that started my healing. At the time, I was in rehab for my knees, and they told me I needed knee surgery, and I had arthritis and torn meniscus and all of that. In 5 days, My knees didn't hurt. I canceled my rehab and started going to yoga classes, and my brain fog cleared. I have not had it since. So many things happened that were good. Matter of fact, a year ago, I went to the 2 years ago, I went to eye doctor. She told me I needed cataracts and they were progressing. Last year, I went for a checkup. She told me, "Oh, your cataracts are getting better. You don't need surgery."
Hey, that is incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Really
Yes.
appreciate it. The next person I want to talk to today is Mr. Robert Tatman.
There we go.
Hello, how are you today?
Good morning. Doing well.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story. I would like to know how long you have been on a all plant-based diet.
Yes, yes, I began this journey in about 4.5 years ago, October 2016.
2016. Okay.
And what prompted me to take this journey was for the previous 15 years, my cholesterol numbers were fluctuating very high, constantly over 200. Now, mind you, I'm in pretty good health. I stopped eating red meat and pork ever since I read Elijah Muhammad's How to Eat to Live back in '75. So I've been off red meat and pork for years. But around age 53, my cholesterol numbers began jumping.
Okay.
And they were consistently above 200, as high as 236 in 2003 and about 216 in 2014.
Okay.
And so I happened to go on a jazz cruise in October of 2016. And one of the options at the jazz cruise was a healthy food station. Now, I always resisted it. I stepped on the plant-based because I never felt it could fill me. I like to eat. I eat 5 times a day. And I never thought it could fill me. But on this cruise, they had the plant-based diet option.
Allie, I froze.
With that, when I got back,
Yes.
Oh, his connection is off.
the spring of that year, by the spring of that year, my cholesterol had dropped 28 points. So I was hooked.
Really?
I was hooked.
Really?
Yes, my BMI has always been good. My blood pressure's always been good. No diabetes, but just that cholesterol started jumping on me, and I got concerned.
Wow. So in just 6 weeks, you saw that much of a difference in your cholesterol.
Yes, ma'am. You know, usually I'm the type of person that if I understand what's wrong, if I know what I need to do differently, I can usually make an adjustment.
Wow, that is phenomenal. And so you did find that the food was filling, because there is that misconception that eating
Oh
a diet. I'm sorry.
Yes. I mean, I learned how to, I eat 5 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then I have a mid-meal. I have a mid-morning snack, which is usually my smoothie and my antioxidant smoothie, and then at mid-afternoon, I have my nuts and some fruits. And with that, I don't get hungry anymore.
Wow. What can you share, like, probably what is the most favorite food that you have discovered?
Most favorite food? Oh,
yeah, like in this process, is there a combination or a dish, something that you?
Yes, kiwi is a fruit I've learned to love. Quinoa.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. I always love my kale and my greens.
Okay.
My wife has begun to make some Moroccan salads, various salads that are healthy with beans and whatnot. I have a wonderful coach, Jen, who gives me lots of recipes, and she keeps me on the straight and narrow. And so all those things work for me. I'm not a cook. So I struggle with preparing meals.
Okay.
So I like to prepare simple meals, and I just put them all in a bowl, and I eat. I get it in, I get it out.
So are there any other people in your family that have embraced this, plant-based diet, or is it just you?
It's just me. My wife is slowly coming around, but you know, she still likes her pork chops and her chicken, fried chicken. She's from this part of the country. She's from the South, and so she likes that. So no, it's really just me. I got a lot of friends who they're watching me. I know they're watching me, and some of them are listening, and I think they're picking up a little bit of it. But you know, I try not to proselytize. I just eat it, and they've accepted me. They say now, let me get some meal. Got to have a meal for Rob.
Absolutely.
I do that, and I carry my meals with me. I always carry fruit, some nuts.
Yes.
Always carry something with me.
You know, Rob, I have learned in my journey as well is that if I don't eat before I leave the house, I'm going to stop and get something back. I'll get that sandwich. I'll get that burger. That's the place where I kind of fall off. But if I eat healthy at home, which I do eat healthy at home, and then I have almonds in my car, I have water in my car, I make a point of taking a tea or a smoothie with me, and it really helps to keep me on balance, when I'm out moving around, because that's where I find my weakness is. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that tip.
About 3 years ago, I took a trip across. You're welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. I've been on this journey less than a year, and it's the temptation of going outside of my house is my challenge of temptation. So the next awesome but not least person here that I want to introduce to you is Miss Gwendolyn Honduras. How are you? And welcome.
Hi.
Hi, and she's from Illinois. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. We appreciate it and look forward to hearing it.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm the newbie. I've only been whole food plant-based for 5 months, but I want to share my little 5-month journey. It's been amazing. I'm 58. I have a birthday tomorrow. So Vivian, I'll be 59 tomorrow.
Happy birthday.
But I want to share with anyone that's getting ready to start. It's so amazing to just journey into this lifestyle. After 1 week, I knew that it was like, I don't want to go back. I did read a lot of literature about the animals that I was taking in, and I thought, you know what, I'm not going back. I spent a lot of my lifetime eating those foods, and into my years of being 50, it was just like nothing was happening good. And I was like, it's got to be a change. Like, I know my daughter had told me a long time ago, like, Mom, you should change over. And I was like, I need some fried chicken here and there. And I'll eat a salad. I figure I was good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm a shopper part-time, and I start shopping for this customer by the name of Meryl. And, when you drop off their groceries, you don't see them. It's no contact. But one day she popped her head out, and I go, you know what? You must be a vegan, a vegetarian or something. I'm shopping all these vegetables for you. And I'm like, I should start eating like this at my age. I have spent a lot of time eating everything wrong. It's time for me to change over and not go back. And she peeped her head out one day and thanked me. And we had a conversation, and it's history from there. She would always invite information for me. She told me to join the community. I love her to death. I see her every week. I have the opportunity to shop for her every Saturdays, bringing her these wonderful vegetables and whole foods that I shopped for and thought, I need to do this. So the week that I started, it was the day after I delivered to her, and I couldn't wait to tell her that next week, guess what? I started. So I had went a whole week and was like, I did a week, you know. So then I would ask her questions like, when do I find out that I really nipped this? Like, how many weeks, how many months can I say I got this and not go back? So then, you know, weeks go by, then the months go by, and I'm like, okay, I'm really doing this. I'm not going back. There's no way. I enjoy the foods. I enjoy the recipes, the resources that I get, so I'm not bored with just one thing. Love my salads, love a vegetable soup, but I wanted to learn to cook some different foods, and she always gave me different recipes. And she introduced me to Meryl, and I saw one of her cooking shows and great. I was like, yes, I can do this. So I want to encourage and inspire anyone that's getting started like me. I'm 5 months in. It's an amazing journey. I'm never going back. I want to live forever. I want to see my grandchildren grow up and aspire to whatever they're going to do. So I'm excited. This is amazing. I mean, I'm almost speechless because I can't tell you enough how much this has brought to my life. Like, I'm so like energetic. I mean, it's amazing. I'm like the energy. I started falling short of my energy because I'm like, well, I'm in my 50s. I'm, you know, this weight is going to be on me. I lost 27 pounds in a 4-month period, and I don't want to go back. So it's an amazing journey. The plant-based whole food. Oh my God. You guys, if you can do it, start. Give yourself a week. And then go from there and just say to yourself, I want to live. I want to live long. I want to eat healthy. I want to lose weight. I don't want to have all these whatever the issues that you might have, underlying health issues from eating animals. Just stop and say, I want to live. I want to be healthy. I want good nutrition in my life and good health. I say, do it. Start today and go forward.
Absolutely. You know what? Thank you for that. There's a lot of testimonials that are happening, you know, as each one of you. So know that as you share your story, you're inspiring people. And in the chat, they are actually encouraging you as well. You know what, Gwen, you said, and everyone here has said something that I think to most of us who are either considering it or at various stages, you know, in the journey, that it's a commitment of self-love, right?
Yeah.
It's a commitment of self-love, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
It was for me, thinking about I have to make a choice every day to eat good. You know, like every time there's a meal, you have that choice to eat healthy or to not eat healthy. And I'll just share a little bit of my journey. It was as we were preparing for COVID and the actual shelter in place. I didn't think we would be in COVID for like a whole entire year. So I was like, this would be a good time to like detox and start a healthier lifestyle. And after a couple of months, I'd lost almost 40 pounds. So I know that experience, you feel so much better. You have so much energy. And as I became comfortable to move around, I started exercising, I started walking, and then I started to experience the clarity. And it also just helped. Like, this is a very stressful time that we're going through, you know, so I had some anxieties, you know, I had other things that I was dealing with, and I know that the diet helped. However, the temptation was moving out. And, you know, so there has been some times where, you know, I was like, I miss my chicken. You know, I miss some of the taste of the fast food and the salt and the grease or whatever. And I have to admit, I fell off. You know, there were a couple of times that I totally fell off the wagon. But the good thing is that you can start, you know, back again, and you immediately see the difference. When you bring that sugar back, or that just whatever it is that you took out of your diet, your body adjusts to it. And once you bring those negative things back into your body again, you immediately, you know, experience, right? The negativity, and you're like, you know what, I just cannot do this again. before we go, we have about 5 more minutes left to this segment. I want to ask each one of you to give some words of encouragement or a tip to anyone on the various roads, whether they're considering this or they've been doing it for a while. And I'm going to start back with Vivian. What would you?
I think the most important thing after you first get started is to not let yourself get hungry. On my way in to my home, I pass the chicken places and the Wendy's and all of those. And at the times that I'm hungry, I have actually a couple of times been tempted to stop because I love fried chicken.
Yes, yes.
And I said to myself, no, I'm going home and eat. And I always have something in the freezer that you can pull out. Batch cooked. Yes. So I said no, and I feel so good with myself that I bypass that and go home and pull out something from my refrigerator or freezer. It might be something simple, but don't cave in. Stick with it and try not and get hungry as much as possible. Keep nuts and things in the car like that. That is, if you don't have a health condition that require you not to eat nuts and certain foods, like a heart condition. You can't eat too many nuts with that. But try not to cave in and have something at home. And even if it seems plain by comparison to one of the chicken shacks, don't do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. So that is a key thing, is to meal prep, to always have something in your house that you can get to. So if you can make it past the restaurants, you can go home and you can have something prepped that you can eat right away.
And one other thing, get rid of all of your favorites because they will call your name. Don't have anything in your house, as Chef AJ would say, that will call your name.
I totally understand. And you have to spend the time with the food prepping, but that's a part of the love too. Thank you, Vivian. For that. Thank you so much. And Robert, what would be your tip or your words of encouragement that you would leave with anyone here today?
Yes, I would say have a reliable support system.
A support
that
system
works for you.
That's important.
For me, it's faith, my family, friends, and facts. The 3 F's. As far as faith, in the Bible, it talks about your body's a temple.
Yes.
And I can say to myself, if the good Lord has given me this body, I just need to take care of it. And that's what I want to do. Okay. As far as my family and friends, I tell you, I have a coach, Jim, who keeps me on track, and her support system, Gail, my wife, and they tease me. But they keep me going. I'm cutting out the sodium and the salt and the sugar. Still working on that.
Okay.
And then the facts. We just heard from Dr. Williams. I rely on data. I don't go with any of this anecdotal stuff. And even now, you got to check your facts because of 45. So I rely on facts. So I say faith, family, friends, and facts as your support system. That works for me.
That is amazing. Faith, facts, family, support system. You know what? I have definitely do my research, and I am also a label reader, and so I'm sure that you all can attest to becoming a label reader, and just reading what you're consuming. And I think one of the things I've discovered here is that that soy is not my friend. And so a lot of vegan food has soy in it, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It just is for me personally. And I think that was also one of the things that was leading to some of my difficult days when I when I backslid, but it was also giving me, I was like having hot flashes, and it just wasn't reacting very well with me. So it also pushed me to cook a little bit more as well too, because I have to be very careful about what it is that I consume. I would have to say too that this organization has been instrumental in helping to find different recipes, to find a lot of information, and Meryl's cooking demos have been phenomenal. And I'm sure you all can attest that she has shared multiple awesome meals with you. Lastly, Gwendolyn, can you share a tip or some encouragement?
Yes. So my tip and encouragement would be to stop eating out. That would be number one. Start cooking at home, eating at home, and make you a little lunch bag for your road snacks. And then that way you don't have to stop at a restaurant. You just go in your little snack bag and get you an apple, banana, whatever you want to snack on, almonds, like you said, and go from there. Start one day at a time, but you'll have to give up. You just got to give up the fast foods and stay away from the restaurants, and definitely stop the meats altogether. And then just go with it like that. I want to encourage everyone to start, because again, you could live so much longer. You're so much healthier. Your body feels better. There's so many benefits. Why not? It's just like, should I do it or should I not? Well, do you want to live or do you want to die? So my whole thing is, it's easy for me to say, I'm not going to eat those things anymore. I want to live. And that's the encouragement I want to give everyone. Start today. There's no time like the present. Get rid of all of the bad foods and start today. Make this your life change today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So Rob, I want to bring you back one more time because people really enjoyed your 4 F's, correct? So can you repeat them again? Because people ask for that.
Yes, for me it's faith. Again, several scriptures they talk about your body is a temple. Lord has done so much for me that I can take care of what he's given to me, and that's my temple. That motivates me. Family and friends, family/friends. They keep me on the right path. They give me advice, encouragement. They let me know when I'm going astray. And then facts. I stick to the facts. Dr. Williams, you got Dr. Colin Powell, you got Campbell, Ornish. A lot of facts are out here now. I went to a cardiologist just last week.
He's frozen. Okay, go ahead.
So faith, family, friends, and facts.
There you go. Thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. Faith, family, friends, and facts are the 4 F's. So thank you for sharing that. This has been phenomenal information. So thank you all for sharing your testimonies. Thank you for the tips. Thank you for the words of encouragement. Definitely visit the pbnm.org. Join the organization. There's definitely an opportunity for you to sign up for a newsletter. There's an opportunity for you to donate because it is a nonprofit organization. So it is an opportunity for you to donate in order to continue to receive all of the great information. And this is probably one of the best things, in my opinion, about the organization, is that there's a support system there. And you need the support system along the way. There are some that, embrace this lifestyle and there's not a problem. But for me, I need the support system. Those days when, that hamburger is calling me because I love hamburgers. That day where, that Sunday, that strawberry Sunday is calling my name, that I don't need, that support system, that person you can call. And there's recipes, there's information. So definitely, but there's a treat that's coming up. So this is not over. So hang on just a little bit more. There's a phenomenal treat. We've talked about Meryl and her great cooking demos, right? Well, before we end this session, we're gonna have a phenomenal cooking demo. So I think Meryl is ready for us, and she's got an amazing meal. I'm going to let her tell us exactly what she's going to cook for us today. There she goes. Hey, Meryl.
Hey. This has been so much fun. Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, Rob and Vivian and Gwendolyn and Dr. Williams for all the depth and breadth of information. This has been great.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing. I'm going to do a cooking demo, and I need to warn you up front. Things can get a little bit silly in my kitchen sometimes, okay? So I'm going to make that my disclaimer right up front. I also have a dog, okay? He is not in the kitchen, and he won't be in the kitchen, but he tends to bark whenever I am talking to anyone, okay? So if you hear some yapping in the background, I'm just going to ignore it and keep going, and he'll wait. So
okay.
All right.
What do you got for us today?
Today we are doing a quick, easy demo because we don't have a lot of time. It's already prepped and ready to go, okay? So here's the thing. You've heard Dr. Williams and seen the data, right? It's very clear. Food is key. It is the thing to make a difference in your health. Now, I'm a registered nurse, so I am all about health all the time. My family is like so tired of hearing me up on my soapbox about food and health, but today I get to share it with you. So food is the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my mantra is keep the food packed with vitamins, packed with minerals, high in plants, fruits, veggies, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. That generally means it's going to be lower in calories, it's going to be lower in fat, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Be richer in general based on the nutrient content. Then when you have whatever you decide to cook, cook it with love and gratitude. Those are two key ingredients. Love and gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Makes the food delicious. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So today we're going to do a little quick demo. I'm doing a loaded sweet potato. Let me go over to my oven, which is just over there, and I'll get the potato and bring it right back. 1 second.
Absolutely. So while she is gathering the potato, I definitely want to encourage you to go to the website, pbnm.org, sign up for the newsletter. Again, there's opportunities to donate. There is support system. There's great recipes. And also be aware that you'll just find an immense amount of data. It has been extremely instrumental for me during this journey. So you're ready, Meryl?
I am ready. Okay, so I actually really enjoy cooking. There was a time I actually hated cooking. TBH, I hated it. I used to have to cook a lot of meat and animal products for my husband because he was a sworn carnivore, and it just really was not a good fit for me. At one point, my husband saw the light and started eating the way I eat, which it allowed me to be happier about cooking. Today, we're going to be doing this loaded sweet potato, which ought to be pretty easy for anybody who's just starting out and fairly familiar, recognizable. Over here, we have my food camera. You can see me waving at you, okay? So I've just already put this baked sweet potato on a plate. Just like fun facts. I'm a little bit of a food nerd, okay? I'm warning you. Sweet potatoes and yams in the United States are pretty much the same thing. They're interchangeable. We use those words the same way. You can have candied yams or you can have candied sweet potatoes. We just have certain way we use the two words, but they really mean the same thing. Sweet potatoes, or yams actually, yams and sweet potatoes really are two very different vegetables, two very different types of roots. They're from two totally different families. One is actually from the iris family, that's yam, and one is from the potato family, which is the sweet potato. We are working with a sweet potato today specifically. This is called a red garnet sweet potato. There's lots of different types of sweet potatoes. I'll show you 3 different types now. This is a Japanese yam, okay? Dark red on the outside. And I'm just going to cut the tip off so you can see. Oops, white on the inside. Still sweet, but not as sweet as the orange sweet potato, okay? This is like a regular traditional sweet potato. You all probably know what that looks like on the inside. That's what we usually use to make sweet potato pie or candied yams or something like this. Red garnet yams are super sweet, very velvety texture, and really flavorful, okay? So we're just gonna start the bake. This yam has already been baked, obviously, and I scrubbed them before I baked them. Most people probably do that too, because you know they can be kind of dirty coming out of the ground like that. So I just kind of cut it open and mash it up. Other thing, for loading sweet potatoes, choose a potato that's more shaped like a football than shaped like, you know, a sausage. This one like is a little bit funky shaped, longer, chunky on the on this end. But you want to choose something that's going to be easy for you to load and fill, okay? We have all kinds of stuff over here to fill it with. One of the things I'm going to show you right now is these are soaked cashews. I've been soaking them in water. I actually put them in water overnight because I had a lot going on. But you can soak them for, you know, an hour. Raw cashews soaked, we use to make cream, okay? So I am actually going to turn around. My blender is right behind me, and I'll tell you about making the cream, which we're going to use to load this sweet potato, okay? I'll take the soaked cashews. I'm going to take some medjool dates, which are also soaked. Here, I'll take these out of the water. You can see that. Okay. About 3 or 4 medjool dates is plenty. And I'm going to use just a little bit of orange juice today to make this cream. I'm going to turn around. It's probably going to get a little bit noisy because I'll be using my blender, okay? I'll be right back. I don't know if you can see me back here. So you put the cashews in. We're going to put the dates in. The dates actually have pits in them, so remove the pits and the blossom end or the stem end before you put it in the blender. That's 4 dates there. And I'm going to put in, this is about a 1/4 cup of orange juice. The blender actually likes to have a little bit of liquid so it can process the ingredients. This is a high-speed blender because really your average everyday blender may not be able to handle the bulk from the nuts too easily. Okay, here we go. Pardon me, a lot of noise coming up. I want you to see the consistency of this. Hopefully, there we go. You can see that. See how creamy that is? Okay. So we're going to start with, these are hemp seeds. hemp seeds are good for protein and your omega-3s. And we'll just sprinkle those inside the yam. They also give it like a little bit of a crunch for texture. Next, let's say, oh, I know. We're going to use a pear. This is a red pear. They're available this time of year. So one of the things we say about eating whole food plant-based is you're going to eat the rainbow. You want something from every color as much as possible. And I will add to that, my own personal belief is you need to eat something from every part of the plant. So if you can get the fruit, nuts, seeds, flowers, leaves, stems, roots, bark, all of it. It all has different functions and carries different types of phytochemicals, chemicals that are in the plant. It all has different vitamins, nutrients, all of that. I will also say one of my favorite tips, and we're asking about tips before, one of my favorite tips is have a sharp knife. There's one thing about working and eating this way is you do a lot of chopping. A sharp knife, and you can increase your knife skills as well. So I'll take the pear and just put it inside the potato. May not all fit, that's okay. It can fall around the outside. Any fruit will do for this. Let's see. I'm going to take some walnuts. Walnuts these days have been recognized as super valuable for brain health. So I'm going to put some walnuts on top. If you can see that better. Let's see. Maybe that's better angle. I also happen to have, just because, I go in the grocery store and I look for different types of fruits. I try to buy one new fruit or vegetable per week, sorry. Every time I go to the grocery store, I try to get one something I haven't tried before. So it tends to have me getting pretty exotic these days. I've been eating whole food plant-based since I was 15 years old. And so that's a fair amount of time. I just turned 60, so I've been at this a long time. And I'm pretty adventurous with how I eat. So there are some oranges. These are Cara oranges. They're pink flesh orange. Let's see what else we have here. I'm going to put some cherries on. These are actually frozen cherries, which I have heated up. Really easy. Oops. I want that down in there. And I'm going to pour a little bit of the juice on just because I can. Why not, right? I wouldn't want to waste that. All right. And now I'm going to take some of this cream. Put that on top like that. I'm going to take a little bit of coconut, this unsweetened coconut. Put that on top like that. And I'm going to take just a little bit of cinnamon, because we can, right? I mean, one of the things about eating like this is to experiment, enjoy the flavors. It is likely that if you're brand new to this, you may have never tasted some of these vegetables. We tend to eat the same vegetables all the time. We eat spinach, we eat celery, we eat carrots, we eat white potatoes, we eat yams, we eat apples, we eat, there's certain things we eat all the time. And the rest of that produce section, you may not even know what 3/4 of the produce is in the produce section, right? So this is a very different, it can be a way to experiment and really learn more about your food, right? Okay, so that is the loaded sweet potato. You can see how that looks. I find that just absolutely appetizing. It smells delicious. You wouldn't believe it. Okay, I'm gonna move this from the food cam, and I'm gonna actually take a bite of it because I think that's always the question, right? All right, it looks good enough. How does it taste though, right? Let's see, I got some of the yam, I got some of the orange, I got some of the cream. Wow. Ooh. Girl, that is good. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad it's lunchtime because this is going to be it for me. The walnuts, let me try it again. A little bit of walnuts. I got a little bit of the hemp seeds, the oranges. I'll try some with the cherry on it. Mm-hmm. You can't argue with that. You cannot argue with that. That is gorgeous. Oh my goodness. You have all the flavors. You've got a combination of textures. You've got some of the crunch from the seeds. You've got a little bit of bite with the pear. You've got the creaminess with the cashew cream. You've got a variation in the little bit of tart with the orange. You've got a little bit of sweet with the cherries and the sweet potatoes. There's nothing missing. There's nothing left out. Beautiful. I will definitely put this recipe, up on our website. And if we have your email, we can send it out to you. This was actually a translation, my personal translation of a recipe that was created by a friend of mine out in Washington State. Her name is Chef Katie May. She's a whole food plant-based chef. I work with her every week and help her with her classes and her, what's going on with her as she's teaching. She works also at some of the great centers for whole food, plant-based, water fasting, and all of that out on the West Coast. So that is it for the cooking demo. I again want to thank everybody and let you know, as Cheryl said before, part of our mission is really to connect with people, to encourage and support and educate and be there for people who are wanting to make this kind of difference in their life. They want to improve their health. And this is the lowest cost, most delicious, by far, way to improve your health, okay? With evidence to back it up. Mm-hmm. After this gathering, and we've already created it, we will be having monthly sessions, monthly meetings. I certainly encourage you. I'll be the one primarily leading those meetings. We also have other board members who may come in and, pitch in with me. That would be fabulous. Everyone is invited. I will absolutely share the recipe. And yeah, with that, Cheryl, I'll let you take it on home. Thank you so much, everybody. Absolutely my pleasure. Our pleasure to be here with you today. Cheryl, back to you.
Thank you, Meryl. That looks so delicious, and I can't wait to try that recipe for myself. Just real quickly before we wrap up, Meryl has shared some amazing tips with me personally. She was a guest on my show. And I just wanted to share with you, a few of the tips that she shared on my show, with every day adding a vegetable to your plate. So you have one vegetable on your plate. The next day, start with eating 2 vegetables on your plate. The next day, add a 3rd vegetable on your plate. And as you continue to add vegetables, it gives you the mindset that you're pushing out the things on your plate that are not as good for you. And it is a way to get in, your daily servings of veggies, and additionally with your fruits. So that has been really, really big for me. She also suggested taking a picture of your plates at your meals, right? And it gives you a visual so that you can see what it is that you eat on a daily basis. So that's been extremely important as well. I also just want to thank Meryl, and I want to thank the plant-based nutrition movement for all that you do, because it has helped me so very much. And so I just wanted to, my words of encouragement is join this organization, support this organization. It definitely will change your life. It's changed mine. And in addition to improving my health, it's helped me to exercise. It's helped me to connect with myself in a different way. So this journey is eating healthy, but it is also a journey to yourself emotionally as well. So as we sign out tonight, I want to thank some people. I want to thank first all of you that joined, all of you that participated in the chat. There's amazing testimonies here. There are amazing recipes. So thank you all so much for spending 2 hours out of your day here. Thank you, Dr. Kim Williams, for that power-packed presentation of information. That was truly, truly amazing. I learned so entirely much. And if you want to reach out to him, he is the Chief Division of Cardiology, Department of Internal Medicine at Rush Medical College and Medical Group. And you can reach him at area code 312-942-5020. I wanted to thank all of the three amazing people: Robert, Chapman, Gwen, Honduras, Vivian, Amos. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. It's truly, truly a blessing. Also, I wanted to thank the board members of the plant-based nutrition movement. Thank you for your dedication to making a difference in the lives of so many people. Want to also thank Bridget from BB Digital Lab for all of her behind the scenes technical expertise that has made this event successful. And I don't want you to forget to follow this organization on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. So it's PBNM on Twitter. And you can also find them on Instagram, on Facebook, and join the organization as well. One last reminder before we leave. As Meryl shared, there is a monthly group, 7 p.m. on the last Tuesday of the month. It's called the PBNM, A Delicious Adventure. It is a time to get together, to fellowship, to support, to encourage one another, to learn recipes and find out like a variety of information. And you can sign up for that on Meetup. So definitely don't forget that. And my name is Cheryl Dunlap. I thank you so very much for the opportunity to be your host for this event. And we hope to see you soon. There will be a replay of this program on YouTube as well. So look for the replay and share with all your friends and family. Thank you, everyone, for being joining this amazing program today. Take care.